Welcome back to Ugly Truck. Today we're working on a 1976 Ford Bronco. This is one of those trucks that it was a will it run? And then after we get them running, the question is always, will it stop? Most times it doesn't stop, and that's where you've got to start replacing brake parts. So this one, when we got it going, we just got it to where the front brakes were stopping on it. I pinched the rear brake line off on it so we could tool around in it a little bit and have some fun. But it needs new drum brakes put on the back, and that's what we're going to do. Drum brakes are a mystery to a lot of people. They're actually really simple. I love them. I have all the parts here that we should need to replace it, so we're going to get started on that. Here we go, step one. In order to do these brakes, you're going to have to remove the wheel.
That's weird.
Yeah. Hey, where'd the drum go?
Huh.
So when this truck came to us, this back wheel was locked up. There was no way I could get it to move, so I took the wheel off and I broke the drum off by hitting it with a sledgehammer and broke it into pieces. And then so that's the way it's been since I did that, just to get it going. So next step, if it was real dusty or whatever right now, I'd clean it off, but it's not dusty because the drum hadn't been on it. So let's take and just take everything apart. You're gonna need one of these. There's a few different styles of them. You could do it without, you could do it with a vice grip, but this tool makes it a lot easier. Pulls all your springs off and installs them. The hold down pins for the shoes, I like to do them with pliers. They do make a tool for those. Probably need this side. I'm right-handed, which I primarily just use my right hand. That's what right-handed means.
Huh. Good to know.
Yep. Okay. That's froze up. Adjuster cable. Spreader bar. Pins for the wheel cylinders. Anchors. Alright, so I'll take there's a little horseshoe clip here that holds the emergency brake lever on. I bend it up to where I can get hold of it, like that. The new hardware kit, it comes with a new one, so just ruin it. Okay. So, the wheel cylinder. This is where it gets difficult.
Think so?
Yes. WD-40. It'll require WD-40, which is always my favorite part. I'm going to spray some WD-40 on the lines on the back. Chances of them breaking loose are really next to nothing. Okay. So the steel fitting is rusted to the line. So it did break loose from the wheel cylinder, but I'm not going to twist on it until I get that line loose. Otherwise, you'll just twist that steel line off. And I don't really feel like replacing the lines today, so I'll try to do my best not to have to do that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that line's broke.
It is?
Yeah. Right there.
Oh no! How are we going to replace a brake line?
I don't know.
Oh God.
Oh, what next?
Huh?
What next? You know,
Close the shop.
just one thing after another.
Okay, so just my wiggling around on that line broke it, so I probably needed to just figure on replacing it anyway, but I didn't want to today. But we will be today, so be another good lesson.
Yeah.
How to make a brake line.
Ooh, does that mean you're gonna have to make flares?
I'll make some flares. Yeah.
I love flares.
Oh, I do too. So, at this point, let's see if the emergency brake cable moves. If it does, we can reuse it. Holy smokes. It actually works. Huh. So that's cool. So at this point, if this had had a drum on it, it'd be full of dust and everything. You wouldn't want to do this, but it didn't have a drum, so I'm going to start by blowing this junk off of it. When I'm doing stuff, I like to get everything that has to be undone done, and it's got a couple of broken studs on it, so I'm going to replace those while I'm at it. So it's got a little bit of it sticking out, otherwise I wouldn't hammer on it. Okay, so I got everything all apart. I like to get everything kind of organized. I got a new hardware kit. I know what pieces are in here, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to get rid of the pieces that I know that are in the new hardware kit and that I will not need. Make sure your new nail is the same length as the old one. Sometimes there's a couple different size nails in those bags. So I got this, that, the adjuster cable. Don't need that. Don't need that. That spring's trash. That one, do need that. Make sure on the little, this is a cable guide. Sometimes this little piece that holds it where it's supposed to go is broken off. So you look at those real good. Make sure they're okay. Don't need that. The self-adjuster. You can buy these brand new. I'm not going to. I'm just going to fix this one. And I'll show you how to do that right now. That end piece usually is stuck on very, very hard, so I'm going to warm this up. Usually with just a little bit of heat, it'll start moving, okay? So in the event that the brake line hadn't broken like that, the fitting wouldn't twist on the line. So what I would have done, I would have knocked the cylinder out of there so there's no pressure that was able to build up, or take the bleeder screw out. And I would have heated this nut up until it was cherry red. And I would have gave it just a few minutes, and then it doesn't take hardly anything at all. And then next thing you know, that nut, it'll spin on that line. Okay, so now it's turning on there, and I would have been able to undo it from that wheel cylinder that way. We might reuse that fitting, so if I don't have one that size, so we'll still need to get that off of there. So that's hot. Don't step on it. How cool this is now. Give it a little bit of WD-40. Just let it cool off, okay? So, all right, so let's put the wheel cylinders in while we're waiting for the stuff that we heated up to cool off a little. Do yourself a favor when you're buying brake parts, buy good parts. Don't buy the cheapest thing you can find for them. These are Wagner, I believe. Great company. They sell great brake parts. Never have any problem with them. That's the key to it, buying good parts. You don't want to have to do this twice, so just make sure you buy good stuff. With wheel cylinders, there wasn't an option on this one, but sometimes you'll have one that's got a different size diameter wheel cylinder, so you want to check that and make sure your wheel cylinder looks exactly the same as the one that you took off. About everything that I put together on these is going to have a little bit of anti-seize put on them, keep them from rusting in the future. So and the wheel cylinders are different from left to right on this thing. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're exactly the same from side to side, but this one, the brake line shoots off out that direction. So this is the wheel cylinder for that. If we weren't going to replace that steel line, I wouldn't tighten these up just yet, because if you don't have these back to all that tight yet, and you can wiggle that wheel cylinder around just a little bit, it makes it a lot easier to line up that steel line fitting with a wheel cylinder. So, but we're going to replace it, so it's not going to be a problem. I'm going to give it a little bit of anti-seize there. They make special grease for these, brake caliper grease or but I've used anti-seize forever. I've never had any issue with it. I've taken them back apart and it's still got it on there. If you get this stuff on your hands, you know it doesn't come off or whatever you touch it on. So while I'm doing it, the emergency brake bar, it pivots inside the shoe there, so I'm going to put a little bit on it right there, and it also rubs on the shoe right there. So any place where it comes in contact with something else, I'm going to give it a little bit of anti-seize. But I'm not going to get it on the shoes. That's the other thing, what you don't want to do. Drum brakes don't work very good when you get grease on them. I don't know why.
It's almost like they need friction.
Something like that.
Huh.
Okay, look at that. Bag of new parts. Awesome. Same thing with this stuff. This is a Wagner kit. The springs that hold this stuff together are really, really important, and I'll explain that here in just a little bit. Get your drinks and your popcorn or whatever you need, because it's going to get fascinating here pretty quick. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then share it with a friend, send it off, share it, and then hit the like button.
Yes.
Run and get some popcorn and a drink and get back, and we'll get started on this thing.
Okay. Sounds good. 1, 2, 3, go.
Go. All right, so this thing, it's all cooled off. This is the self-adjuster. I'll explain it after we put it on, probably, or kind of while I put it on, but physically it's okay. It's really rusty. This happens all the time. You'll take the other side out, we'll take it apart, and there might be a little thin washer between this and that, and a lot of times they got lost. Do not worry about it. I've put at least 1,000 of these together without that little washer, but I am going to anti-seize it. it doesn't affect a thing. If you live right next to O'Reilly's, I guess you could walk over there and buy a new one.
Yeah.
This adjuster, you're gonna, the part that was exposed before, it's gonna be rusted up pretty good. So use some trusty WD-40 and just keep working at it. It'll be fine. But you want to get it to where the threads will go all the way down into it. So in the event that it needs to adjust down that much, you can at least do it and you don't have to fight with it. So these are different from left to right also. So if you're not real familiar with drum brakes and you're going to tackle one of them, it's not a bad idea to do one side at a time. That way you've got something else to look at in case you don't have a good memory. You don't know how to, not sure which piece goes where. And it'll stop you from getting that screwed up, left to right parts. So I got this thing moving freely now. Okay, I worked on it for no more than 2 hours. Person might say, why don't you just go buy a new one? Well, if you work on cars your whole life, or even just a couple weeks, you'll learn to be very cheap. Because the $15 that I would have saved on this, I could take you out to dinner tonight.
Oh my goodness. Where would we go?
Someplace nice. Someplace nice. So put a little anti-seize on that. If you're afraid to get your hands dirty, this is not the job for you. Also, this cable guide, I put anti-seize on the back of it because it rubs against the shoe. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get anti-seize on everything that I need it to be on, because here in a second I'm going to wash my hands in order to put things back together. Some wheel studs, the new wheel studs, I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on them. I want them to go in there, a press fit in there, so I want them to go in there good. So I'm going to set them in there now. We'll pull them in just a little bit. It's easier to put them in when there's no shoe there. One other thing, on drum backing plates, a lot of times you take them apart and there's a groove worn right here from the shoe rubbing on it. This one's got a little bit of one on it. It's not that big of a deal. You don't need to run out and start looking for a new backing plate. Well, if you have a welder. So like if this was, I've seen them where they were worn to where there's an actual hole in them. So I weld them up and then I grind them flat again and just repair them like that. So if you took them apart and you didn't have a welder, you could take the whole thing apart and take it to somebody and have them fix it. But because these are hard to find on older cars to find one to replace it. All right, so I put the little pins in that go into the wheel cylinder. Okay, and I put the little prongs facing up because they have to fit in the shoe right there. So I'm gonna wash my hands with some tub of towels.
Very casual.
We love tub of towels.
They do work really nice on the old paint like this.
Oh yeah, look.
Yeah, look at it.
This makes that thing sparkle.
Yeah, look at that. Whew. Baby's ready for the car show. Oh goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna lose points for that. This might be my favorite part of this whole Bronco.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The piece of...
Oh, it's a wire strap.
Yeah. It's doing a great job.
Ready for some knowledge?
Sure.
Okay. Brake shoes. There's a difference. Okay, there's what's called a primary shoe and a secondary shoe. This is the primary shoe. It's a smaller. I'll hold it up so you can see, right?
Yep.
Okay. The smaller one It's a primary shoe, okay? You get into some newer cars now, they don't have different size shoes. If they don't, whatever, just use them both on either side, but look at them. The primary one's the smaller one. It goes to the front of the vehicle, okay? And I'll explain why in just a second. Bonded or riveted. These brake shoes are bonded. If they were riveted, there'd be some rivet holes, about 10 of them along this shoe. I like bonded ones because the riveted ones, the rivet holes, they fill up with dust and it makes a big groove in the drum. So I like bonded ones myself. All right, so this is where tub of towels come in. You're gonna try to do the rest of this and keep the shoes as clean as possible. So just try not to touch the friction material on the shoes. And it's not easy to do. When we get done here, we'll clean them off, but the less amount of grease that you get on them is the better, you know, of course. So got a emergency brake lever. That's attached to your emergency brake cable. Your secondary shoe. Right there. Your new horseshoe clip. Okay, so that's attached. All right, so I'm gonna bring this up here. I'm going to make sure my wheel cylinder pin is in the shoe right there. All right, so this is where you need 3 hands. Okay, like I said, they make little tools to do this, but I've always used a pair of pliers. And, okay, so now I'm gonna put my adjuster cable on here. It comes in contact with a piece of metal right there, so I like to put a little bit of anti-seize on it. Goes right there. Okay. Put it up out of my way, and okay, that's the cable guide.
Is that like what tells you what channel a show is on?
Yes. Okay, so this is where this tool is nice. It's got a little teeth on it that grab that pin, and it's going to pull that spring up and around to that. So you can do a spring like that with very little effort. Then I make sure that the cable guide is actually in the hole on the shoe. Sometimes it gets popped up and it's not against the shoe the way it's supposed to be. So I take a look at that. All right. And the cable is gonna run on that cable guide right there. And again, I'm gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on it because that moves right there. Okay. So that portion, I'm gonna leave it alone for a bit. All right. This is the spreader bar for the emergency brake. When the emergency brake is applied, this bar is spread against the primary shoe, and it applies the emergency brake. Sometimes the kit comes with a new one of these, sometimes it doesn't, so I don't throw those away until I know. It did come with a new one. Okay. Sometimes these are left and right, so I make sure I keep that. You just want to make sure it's not touching on anything in there. Okay, so this one, this is where your adjuster comes in. This is the little lever that goes to the secondary shoe that pushes against the adjuster to adjust your drum brakes up. Okay, so this is going to go right there. Okay, and then this one, the spring is held on that way, and you're going to reach in there, get that, put it in there, hold it with your left hand, and then you need to get the adjuster in there. And that's why I like to be able to adjust them all the way down, because the smaller that is, the easier it is to get that piece in there. Okay? At this point, the way the primary shoe is, if I let go of it, everything just wants to fall apart on this left-hand shoe. So I'm gonna put everything together. Okay. Kind of hold everything where it's supposed to be. Okay. And I want to get my spring in there with the nail on it to hold it all together, so I can get the rest of it. Okay, so with that holding it, everything kind of stays in place, so I can put the last spring on here. And you notice it's different from that one, okay? It's different for a reason. I'll tell you why in a second. You want to make sure. Sometimes these are bent up a ways. You just want to make sure they're bent over good, that they can't come off. So everything's together except for the cable, the adjuster cable. All right. And so I put the adjuster cable in that hole on the adjuster, and I grab it and rotate it up and slip the cable onto its guide. Okay, so after you do that, you want to make sure your adjuster works. All right, and how you know? You want to hear that. You want to hear that noise, and you don't want your adjuster to be able to go backwards on it. You only want that one direction. So you want it to turn that way and not the other way. And the way emergency or adjusters work is when you hit your brakes when you're backing up, that shoe pulls on that cable, takes some of the length out of it, and if there's enough play in the back drums, there's enough for it to grab the next cog, and it'll adjust your brakes up on its own. And it only does that in reverse. If you never back up and stop, it'll never adjust. All right, so that's done. Okay.
Okay.
If you look at the way drum brakes are, a person, you would look at this and say, oh, the way that drum brakes work is that pressurized fluid, when you apply your brake, comes into the wheel cylinder, pushes out on the shoes, and then would spread them against the drum, okay, to create friction and to make it stop. That's not how they work. What happens is the drum brakes are what's called self-energizing, and this is why front drum brake car or truck from way back when, and when you apply the brakes, it wants to go in whatever direction the shoes are adjusted wrong in or not working in. So it's because they're self-energizing. What happens is the wheel cylinder pushes out, and it actually just starts the process of the shoe doing its work against the drum. The shoe, it wedges itself inside the drum, and it basically energizes itself. The spring, when you let off your brake, it's what pulls that brake shoe away from the drum. So that is why it's so important to replace the brake hardware in a drum brake system, because the springs do a lot more than just hold everything together. Okay, if you had one of these that was weak, it had gotten too hot or something like that at one of the springs, it might self-energize too much and have a tough time coming off. So it'll create problems. That's also why both sides have to be adjusted up nice and even, especially after you do brand new stuff. Like if it was on the front, if you had an old truck that had drum brakes on the front, if they're not adjusted the same, they're going to energize differently. So, okay, so that's it. That's why I think drum brakes are cool. The drums. This is the other thing. These Ford people are going to freak out, but these drums, I bought them. They're AC Delco. You might have heard of them. They do auto parts, and what else do they do?
Auto parts accessories.
Auto part accessories. Yeah. All right. Auto part. What is an auto part accessory? This drum, they're brand new. This one didn't even have one on it, so we definitely had to do one. If we were reusing the old ones, I'd put it in our brake lathe and we'd machine a surface on it again that's round. But this is probably the biggest reason for buying like a high quality brake part, especially when you get into the drums and when you're buying rotors and things like that. This thing has got to be round. If it's not perfectly round, or I shouldn't say perfectly round, they're kind of forgiving, but they have to be pretty round. If they're not perfectly round, what happens when that shoe is self-energizing? It catches on the high spot in the drum, and it locks them up pretty good. So if you have a drum brake system that, if you can feel the car pulsating a little bit when you're hitting the brakes, it's a drum that's out of round. So, and they need to be the same diameter, especially on the fronts. If you want it to brake equally on the front, you'd want a drum that's the same diameter. All right, let's put the wheel studs in, and then we'll put this drum on, and we'll adjust it up. To put a stud in for a lug nut, I use a bearing, and hold it in the back. Make sure you lube the stud up a little bit. I put some anti-seize on everything, and do it by hand. Do it by hand so you can feel if something's going wrong. This will draw it in. If you don't do that, and you go and put the drum on and then try to put the wheel on, then you end up fighting it. It'll fall back in. So, that ain't gonna fight you. And tightening. Okay, so that's on there. All right, and notice I did the whole thing, didn't get any grease on the shoe. Okay, so that's plenty clean to not have to clean it off. If I had gotten it dirty with a big fingerprint or something, I would have taken some brake clean or some lacquer thinner, just clean the grease off of it. One thing when you're buying drums, remember too, I buy them all the time and they're not round. I need them to be the same size, so I have to take them back to the store. If you order these online somewhere, it's kind of hard to return them and get a new one. So think about that when you're buying parts like that.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many times we've had to put one back in the box and run it back, and they're more than happy to exchange it for you. It happens all the time that they're not perfectly round. And at least that's the least hassle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So try to remember, they just sell the parts. They don't make the parts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes these have a anti-rust coating on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm gonna clean it up. These don't, but I'm gonna wipe everything off them just in case. Nice and clean, dry. Okay. Okay. It's just a pinch loose. Okay. Except for lug nuts, most everything on a car, if you do it too loose, it's okay.
Yep.
You know? So I like to put drum brakes together. If anything, I don't want them too tight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to me, that is perfect. Okay? It's just barely touching the shoes in there at all. And I know that I got the adjusters working okay. When I get it all done and drive it, it'll adjust to where it's supposed to be. But as long as I have it close, which I know I have it real close, I'm real happy with that. That'll be perfect. Well, when we first started on this, on that wheel cylinder, Emily, she broke this brake
I
line.
did not.
So now I got to spend 15 minutes making a new brake line here. If she hadn't jostled around on it too much,
I didn't even touch it.
I could be relaxing. But it's not going to happen. So, all right, all joking aside, we knew we were going to have to do the brake lines anyway before Emily broke them. But this is the brake hose that comes along, and this is a vent for the differential. I just undid it a little bit to pull it away from there so I can get to this fitting. And we're going to end up doing this side too, because Emily will break that side also. Mm-hmm. So we'll just undo both those. Okay. So what I do with those, I just, since it's in there real tight, vice grip it right there. Then I can put a socket over it because it's gonna want to just spin, you know.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so all right. For now, I'm just gonna leave this a little loose. All right. Okay, this 3/16 line, this is steel. You can buy this in some other materials that are a lot softer than this, and they don't corrode as bad either, actually. But there's a reason why I don't like it. Okay, so this is what you do. This is how you do not do a brake line. Okay, a steel brake line.
Do not do that.
Do not do this.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I come in here and I measure, and we're at 1 foot 6 inches there, okay? So I don't go and I buy a 1 foot and 6 inch line, all right? I'm gonna buy a line that is a bit longer. So the brake line, the reason it comes out of the wheel cylinder right there, and it comes through here, it comes right to there, and then it pops up over the U-bolts. It drops back down onto the axle right there, and it pops up into the line, okay? Now, if you ran that brake line and you just ran it from here, and then around there, and then around there, you could have that brake line get caught on something, okay? The axle is actually protecting the brake line, and because you're hurling down the road at 100 miles an hour, you've got things that you're passing over like raccoons and kittens and puppies.
No.
And the reason I say this is because I've seen this online, okay? Okay. I've seen this done where people would just take that line and bend it straight out here, put a bend in it like right there, and then put a bend over, and that is not the way to do it. You've got to take that brake line, run it down to that axle as quick as you can, because that axle, it's going to protect that line from getting hit. Somebody puts a chain around this thing, it needs to be tucked against the axle as much as possible. Okay?
Okay.
Your brakes, they are important. Have I ever told you that?
Oh, I don't know.
Huh? It's pretty important that they get done right.
I thought it was important to go fast.
Well, yeah, fast is really important, but whenever I see that online, well, we've been to car shows and seen some pretty crazy brake lines.
Yeah.
But in this case, I'm serious. Your brakes have got to be top notch.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, brakes are important.
Yeah. And these are 3/16 lines. Okay, they bend up pretty easy. What I'm going to do to bend one up, I'm not going to put the flare on it just yet, but I am going to put the line in the wheel cylinder, or the fitting in the wheel cylinder. It'll hold that exactly where I want it. Okay? So basically it's holding it. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
This stuff bends really easy. You can bring it down back behind that shock there. It's a nice, safe place. Okay? Right there. Okay? And remember, I'm going to put a flare on it. So it's going to shorten it up a little bit. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to come back here. Okay, I got my distance where I'm going to cut it off. Okay. Okay, so now it's time to do a flare. When it comes to these lines, this is why I like steel lines. The steel lines they're pretty thick. Okay, we're going to do what's called the double flare, which for brake lines and fuel lines back then, these years, that's the most common. The way a double flare works is we're gonna take our tool. You see the little line on that tool? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the length that you want it to stick out on the holder. All right, and bring it down super tight. Make sure your fitting's on. Okay. We've been through that before,
yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Good. So, you want to make sure it's tight, okay? All the way tight. If it's loose at all, it'll just push the steel line right through there. It won't flare. This got a little chamfer in it in there. Okay, make sure you've taken your tool or a knife or something and cleaned your end out real good. Take the burrs off of it. Okay, so that fits in there, right? I'm going to tighten it down to where you feel it stop, okay? And the reason it stopped is because that piece of that line is folded over, okay? So you'll feel it. Okay, so right there, it's done. It's stopped. I'm going to take it out. Just look at it. That's the way it should look. All right. So this tool with the cone, it finishes the rest of it. So basically, it's pushing that one edge over, and it's folding it over on the inside of that steel line. So that's why it's called the double flare. It's double the thickness on the flare side. That's why I like the steel line. The reason I like it, you see how kind of thick that is, right? Well, it's going in and it's sitting, and it has to press against the fitting on that wheel cylinder. So I've done these before with the other line that's not as thick as that. I really had to crank down on that nut to get it to seal. But this one, I just got it in there a few threads and it's tight right there. So I won't have to tighten it down much at all, and it'll have a good seal on it. That's why I like steel lines. This thing's gonna have all new brake fluid in it, and it's gonna last really long time. You know, it'll last probably till the end of this thing's life. So I put this one up there and get her started. Doesn't have to be, you don't want to put it in tight just yet. Okay, so it'll be like that. So now I got to make a bend that goes up a little bit and then straight into the fitting there. That to go through there, and there, into there. And it's just a little long, so I'm going to take a little off of it instead of bending it and making a big loop in it somewhere.
You don't like loopy loops?
No.
Oh.
Bet you this tool was sharper when I bought it.
Think so?
Yeah. Okay, so now what would I do? I'm quizzing you.
Put your fitting on.
Exactly. Tried tricking you.
Nope. Didn't trick me.
What you got? Okay, so fitting my little gauge. What you got? Huh? What's that? Hey everybody, it's a frisbee. Alright. And all these tools that I'm using here, you can rent them. Rent them, return them, get your money back, doesn't cost you anything. Do a nice job on brake lines. So, here we go. This is why I leave this loose. It's a lot easier to line that up with that being a little loose. And I can get my line started a lot easier. Now this, bend it back down so the line's not rattling around. Your brake line is hidden behind the axle, so anything coming at it right here is out of the way. It's not gonna have a piece of rope or something grab it and yank your brake line off. So brake line's got to be behind the axle, out of the way of as much stuff as possible. So all right, so we got everything on this left-hand side is all done. We can go ahead and we'll pull the right side apart and do it real quick. This side does have a drum on it, so maybe it'll be something different in there. And usually a drum, give it a, I'm not gonna save this drum, we're gonna get rid of it. So I'm gonna smack it on the side right here with a hammer and see if it'll break it loose.
That was easier than the other side.
Yeah. The other side was so bad I had to literally take a sledgehammer and break the whole thing apart. So it would not come off of there. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. Okay, so all this oil here, it's got a axle seal that is leaking. That's what all this junk's from. On this thing, this hole is the exact size for me to stick a socket through there and get to each one of those nuts. Oh, they just need a little taps through that. At least this thing will probably move, huh? It's lubricated pretty good. All this grease that's in here, you don't want to leave it in there because once these brakes get warm, that stuff will start moving around again, get on the shoes. So we'll use a couple cans of brake clean on it, wash it off good. So I got a new axle seal hammered in there. Oh, that reminds me. Drum brakes, they are not adjusted by the emergency brake cable.
Are you sure?
Okay. Yeah, I'm positive. I've seen that done a million times. Does not work, causes huge problems. No.
So you're saying you should adjust the emergency brake cables to adjust the rear drums?
No. No. I've had people argue with me about it. Well, why else would they put an adjustment there? It's to adjust the emergency brake, not the rear brakes.
Yeah, but that's easier than getting to the adjusters.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, but it's easier.
It doesn't work.
I don't know. I don't get it.
Got two shoes, so which is which?
The smaller one is the primary. It goes to the front of the vehicle.
That's right. Good answer, good answer. Ugh. Hold down pins. Nails, some people call them, the hold down nails. Don't put your fingers anywhere near that, because when that spring misses and it pokes into your index finger, it kills.
Oh, goodness.
All right, so this is the part you really can't see when the axle's on, but the cable's not on, right? So I attach it there, and then I just turn the adjuster up, and I slip the cable. Oh, come on. Go. Over its guide. Okay? And this is why you don't adjust them with the emergency brake, because the emergency spreader bar, it just pulls on this rod, spreads that bar apart, and it keeps the shoes from being on its anchor. But in order to have these things work right, both the shoes have to be sitting on the anchor. If they're not on the anchor, then it ain't right, so it isn't gonna work. I got the new seal in it already. The axle seal rides right here on these. It has a sealed roller bearing on the outside that's just held in with a bearing retainer. Use some wheel bearing grease. That will help the seal go. Does it look like it works?
Yep.
Good. What do you think?
Sweet. Okay, so we got one more brake line to do, and I'm gonna make these drums nice and pretty, because that's what matters.
Stopped pretty good with just front brakes. I wonder how good it's going to be with four brakes. Oh, the shock needs replaced.
Think so?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got some life in it. should I mask this off so I don't get any overspray?
All right, what's your method for doing this? How do you do this? Huh?
You go like this, and then you go like this.
Oh,
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
New.
Yep. The outside
Uh-huh.
is where it's the most exposed.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's
like-
where you want paint?
yeah, so I try to focus on that,
All right.
and whatever happens in here is what happens.
Cool. Sweet. And why are we painting them anyway?
So they're pretty.
Oh, not to keep them from rusting?
No.
Okay. And then you put grease on the studs so the paint don't stick to them, right?
Yeah, just axle grease.
Okay.
Wheel bearing grease on the studs, and then once it's dry, we can pull the drum and wipe them off.
Okay. You want to show my brake lines before I paint them up?
Sure.
Okay. So, as you can see, behind the axle where nothing can hit them, nothing can get grabbed onto them, they fit snugly. They're tied down onto the axle. If these are rusted off or whatever, you can hose clamp them or do something to make sure the brake line's not wiggling around. If they wiggle around, they're going to wear a hole in them. So, and then I'm going to coat them with some paint, and hopefully that'll stop them from corroding. Everything on this truck's gonna get painted right before we take it to SEMA.
Yeah.
So this will all get redone, but
Yeah.
oh, we're like paint robots. Paint robots.
Beep boop.
All right, I'm gonna replace the shock. Brand new.
Perfect. What about this one?
You replace that one.
Oh. Huh.
Yep.
Yep.
That's new.
New shocks.
It's a Monroe OE Spectrum. Black. We just need the sticker.
Yep.
So we're at the point. We got the shoes, the hardware, wheel cylinders on, new drums. Emily put a coat of paint on these drums to maybe hold them off from rusting for a while, which is great. Anytime you work on a project and you got a partner working with you, you know they're going to break something. In this case, the back brake lines got broke. The person I was working with, she says that they were rusty. I don't see that happening on this vehicle. So
I can see the seat. I can see the seat from here.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm just
that
saying.
doesn't. Yeah, but that's not the brake line. Okay.
No, but that gives you a pretty good idea what's going on with the brake line.
No.
Yes.
No. The brake line has anti-rust in it. So it wasn't rusted
Okay.
before, but when you grab onto it, move them around too much, then you're gonna break them.
Yeah.
And then who do they call? Me.
Yeah.
Bring me in to fix it.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I did. I've bent up some nice new brake lines. That's the way they're supposed to be done. I've said it all through the video. I've complained about it. Not going to say any more about the brake lines, okay? Tired of it. So we'll put the wheels on. We'll use a torque wrench. We'll torque the new lug nuts down or new studs down. And then I'll drive it after we bleed. We'll have to bleed it yet, but I ain't going to bore you with that. And I'll drive it, and then I'll check the torque again, and then we'll know that we've got those new studs pulled into the axle all the way. So that'll be it for that. And then this truck's ready for SEMA.
Is it like SEA? Because it looks like it was underwater.
Yeah. Well, it'll be there someday. You can see here the color of the interior.
Yeah. This hole, actually, we were doing some other work to this truck, and that's where I fell through the floor. So, don't step there.
On a serious note, though, this thing's going to get a new body put on it. So
Yeah.
that's why we're going to go ahead and make all the mechanical stuff top notch on it, but it's going to get a new body. But for now, these people are having a lot of fun with it. So,
Yeah.
and that's what it's meant for. Subscribe to our channel, please. Hit the like button and share it with other people if you would, please. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.